Hey crafters, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be using some old and new products together and making a fabulous card. So starting with our die cutting, we're going to take the tropical backdrop die and we're going to run that through our die cut machine. And we're also going to cut one of the tropical leaves and one of the trunks that go with this die set. I'm just using a heavyweight white alcohol ink friendly card. Now I'm going to remove the little tree from the left hand side and I'm going to save that and the extra little tree for another project. Alright, now on to the fun stuff. We're going to start with our palm trees and apply some Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide over the leaves, concentrating on the center. And then we're going to use our Pine Needles Distress Oxide just around the outside of the leaves. You don't need too much, just a little bit so that it makes some interesting dimension on our palm trees. And then we're going to use some Vintage Photo Distress Oxide on the tree trunks. Now you could use more than one color, but what I like to do is just use the one color and then concentrate the ink on the bottom just to make it look a little bit more interesting. This is the main panel here. We're going to use the same vintage photo on the sand along the bottom of the tropical backdrop die. And then before I put the blues on the sky, I'm just going to use a little bit of scrap paper and create my own little mask. So using the Faded Jeans Distress Oxide, put it right along the sand, and then going up to a lighter color using Broken China. I'm going to do the majority of the sky. This is also Distress Oxide, I should mention. And then the last color will be the Speckled Egg Distress Oxide, and that's just going to go along the top of our beautiful panel. Right, so now we're going to take a piece of paper that's the same size as our backdrop, and we're going to use the same three colors to make our background. Starting with a Speckled Egg Distress Oxide, and then moving on to Broken China Distress Oxide. Now this ink pad is a little bit well loved, so it needs a bit of a refresher. So that's why I need to keep going back to it so much. And then we'll use our Faded Jeans at the bottom so that we have a beautiful background that's nice and blue. Now right now it doesn't look very nice. So we need to go back and start blending on top to get rid of those harsh lines. Now this is the advantage of using a nice heavyweight alcohol ink and ink pad friendly paper, because if you use a cheap paper you won't get the nice effects. So now we've got a lovely background with some beautiful colors on it. So using that same scrap of paper, I'm just going to cover up the blue and add some of this gold paint on top. I'm just putting on my ink stamper, my acrylic block, so that I can splatter it. Now, if you pull it like this, you'll get lines, but if you just tap it, you'll get dots. So it depends what you're going for. I just wanted a crazy amount of gold, so I did both. Now we have this beautiful backdrop for our card, and I'll set that aside to dry. Now taking a piece of the same alcohol ink friendly paper, I'm going to stamp my images, one of the moose, the picnic basket, and the picnic blanket. Now I do need 2 mooses for my card, but I'll have to stamp them one at a time, and you'll see why in a moment. And I'm also going to put some items in the picnic basket to make it a bit more interesting. So the best way to do this is I use the Post-it note tape. Well, it's actually paper. It's like a full sticky sheet. And I'm going to stamp the picnic basket again on this. And then once that's stamped, I'm going to cut it out, which will take a little bit of time, but it's worth it. And I'm going to create a mask for my picnic basket. Once the mask is in place, I'm going to put the items in the basket, and then I'm going to stamp them. And this is a very clever way to make it look like you have items in your basket. Obviously you've changed the shape, so you will have to fussy cut this out, but it's worth it because you have this lovely picnic basket full of food. All right, to create the next mousse, I'm going to make a mirror image of it. And the way I like to do this is with my waffle flower mini media mat. And I'm going to put my mousse on an acrylic block. And I've tried doing this with lots of different types of ink, but the one I would recommend is the VersaFine Black. Now this isn't good for Copic coloring, but if you let it dry for over an hour or so, or hit it with a heat tool first, then you can use your Copics with it. So once I've stamped the image on the media mat, I'm going to put my paper on top, give it a really good rub, and I get my nice image. Now because this is VersaFine, I'm going to make sure I clean my media mat now so it doesn't stain it, because I don't want to have a mousse on there forever. Now if you find that your image wasn't stamped perfectly, you can always use a black pen just to fill in the gaps. Now I've gone ahead and colored those images off camera, and now it's time to assemble the card. So I'm going to glue the tropical backdrop onto our panel that we created. And then I'm going to glue the tree trunks and then the palm tree leaves on top of our tropical backdrop die. And this is starting to come together really nicely. Now I'm just using a PVA white glue that dries clear. Now I've got my cute little mousses here and my picnic basket and my picnic blanket. So I'll put the blanket down first, and then I'll get some foam tape that I'll use on my picnic basket, and that'll just give it a little bit of dimension there. Now once I've removed those squares, which always seems to take forever, I'm going to put that on and add my mousses to the panel. All right, once I've finished dropping the mousse and I've put them both onto the card panel, I'm ready to move on to the next step. So I'm going to take this part of our card, which looks beautiful, and I'm going to put it onto my card base, which is a 6x6 card, and I'm going to split up my sentiment in 3 parts. Now the middle part of the sentiment is actually from another Lawn Fawn set, which says always a moussing, which I thought was perfect for this card. It's actually called the Dad and Me stamp set, and I'm going to use my Blueprint Sketch Distress Oxide to stamp this. You might have to stamp it more than once to get a nice clean image. And then I'm going to put my card blank in there, and I'm going to add the rest of the sentiment. Now from the Crazy Antics stamp set, there's one that says life's and then at the bottom it says with you. So I don't need the word so I'm going to take my same post-it note paper and put it over the A, and then stamp that life's and then get rid of the A. So it'll just say life's always a moussing with you. All right, now I'm going to adhere my panel to the front of my card base. And then to finish off the card, I'm going to add a little bit of neat and tangled sequins. Now there's a beautiful blue in here that matches the ink colors I used perfectly. So I'm going to take 2 of those blue in each corner and 1 gold. And that will finish off my card and make it look, give it that little bit extra. Now once I finish adhering those down, I'll be happy with my card. Thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting a new YouTube channel.